Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Peter King from NBC Sports in a few moments. But first, our play-by-play call of the day with Tom Brady leaving the Patriots. One last Super Bowl moment.
Now just a minute. They have no timeouts left. Brady again throws.
Well, Tom Brady, he wants to get him lined up so he can just throw the ball down and stop the clock as he did right there.
Here's Brady again. Up the middle, caught, and it's Troy Brown in a 53-yarder. Here comes the blitz, and here's Brady. He dumps it to Wiggins down to the 30, and now no question about it, they are in range, but they got to hurry. Maybe he can spike it right here and stop the clock.
That's what he'll do. He'll spike it here. And this has been a year about Vinatieri and making some great kicks against the Raiders. Two of the greatest kicks that I've ever seen in my life.
Here comes one of greater importance if he makes it. And it's right down the pipe. Adam Vinatieri. No time on the clock, and the Patriots have won Super Bowl 36.
That was their first, and that was the one where John Madden, when the drive began, looking at a second-year quarterback, said, play for overtime, and the Patriots didn't, neither did Tom Brady, and they won it. Peter King was there that day, and there for a lot of great Brady moments, and very pleased to have him with us. Peter, thanks a lot for your time. It is always appreciated by me.
Steve Jones, fellow nutmegger, how you doing?
Fellow Enfield guy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Do all of your listeners know that you and I played on the same baseball team a long, long time ago, only about 45 years ago? Do people really know that?
I think I've mentioned it once or twice, but yeah, we did. And I can tell everybody in no uncertain terms who was the better player. It's the guest. The guest was the better player.
Baby. Steve Jones.
No.
Hey, it's really good to hear your voice. How's everything going with you?
It's going well. Obviously, good. I was in Indianapolis last week to broadcast the Big Ten tournament for Penn State when everything happened. So obviously It was the shock of everybody going through that, but everybody knows what's going on is necessary. So it's everybody has to figure out a way to get through. How about you?
Yeah, I live in Brooklyn, and so my wife and I we just had the dog out for a nice walk. It's a pretty nice day here in Brooklyn, and other than the fact that it's about 80% quieter and not very many people out on the streets. The grocery store was open. There's been, I don't know what it is, but the rest of the country, everybody is seemingly thinking that they're never going to get to shop again, so they got to buy everything in the store. Our store looks pretty normal,
Oh, good.
If you need toilet paper, come to Brooklyn. We're all pretty good. It's you're right. We just got to figure a way to get through this for the next couple of months. Probably we'll see. And look, the more serious that everyone takes this, the faster we'll all be through with it. And so that's kind of the way I look at it.
That was verbatim what I said in the opening half hour. Exactly. The more that we understand how serious it is, do what we're told, then we'll be back on the road to normalcy quicker.
Totally agree.
Yeah. And by the way, and the last time I was in Brooklyn was actually Thanksgiving. I did a tournament at Barclays. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You live 3 blocks from Barclays. This is a growing, cool area now. I don't know, at least to me. Yeah.
No, I think it is too, because I've done a couple tournaments now at Barclays the last couple of years, and every time I turn around, I feel like the place is getting better. I've got to ask.
Yeah.
Okay,
where do you stay when you're here? Do you stay in Manhattan and take the subway over?
No, the Marriott.
Okay, yeah.
The Bridge Street Marriott, whatever it is, the Brooklyn Bridge Marriott.
I know exactly where that is. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We'll get to the Brady part.
Brady? How wild is that?
Let's get to that. What do you think? Is it going to be Tampa Bay? Because I'll say this: I thought that personally that Brady, Robert Kraft, and Bill Belichick all quote said the right things. Is that fair?
Yeah. And Steve, I think really. I'll give you just a little bit of perspective on this. After the playoff game against Tennessee on January 4th, where the Patriots just looked awful, the offense looked terrible, and Tennessee won that game in Foxborough. After that game, I've had a pretty good relationship with Brady over the years, and I spent 10 minutes with him after the game, and I walked away from there, nothing that he said, but I walked away from there with sort of this chilling feeling that there's at least as good a chance he's playing somewhere else this year than he's playing with the Patriots. I mean, it's 50-50 or better that he could be somewhere else. And I think what people don't know all that well about Brady because he doesn't show himself to the public very much. And look, I don't claim to know him all that well. I mean, I know him pretty well. I've interviewed him a lot over the years and spent some time with him in the off season a few times. But I think that what's different about Brady versus, say, a lot of other really great players in history, like Joe Montana did not want to leave San Francisco. He was sort of forced to. Dan Marino didn't want to leave Miami. And Brett Favre really, at the end, really didn't want to leave Green Bay. And so, I mean, you look at all that, and Tom Brady, honestly, he looks at this as more of kind of a life experience. Like, this is not about sticking it up the Patriots' rear end at all. Right. This is about, what person steps out of college and goes and takes one job and never does another job for the rest of his life. I mean, I'm not saying what person does that, but I think it is more natural to work in a second or third or fourth place in your life than the moment you walk off a college campus only working in one place until the end of your professional life. Right. And I think that's really the way Brady feels. Brady feels like, I want more experiences out of my NFL career than just one team. And I think whenever he does address this, I'd be surprised if he doesn't say that was a significant part of his decision to go wherever it is that he ends up.
When you look at the possibilities, how realistic is Tampa? And when I look at Mike Evans and a Penn Stater like Chris Godwin, that does open the door for the potential of better receivers than what he would have had in Foxborough.
No question about it. And I think you just said it. I do think if you watched his body language and his language, period, for people who really, I mean, you'd have to have a pretty good memory for this, but when the Patriots played at Buffalo early in the 2019 season, Patriots won a rock'em sock'em, ugly, toothless offensive game. Okay,
right.
And Brady was afterwards. He seemed disgusted, even though they had just won a tough game against a good team in Buffalo. He was disgusted, and I think he was disgusted because he realized we just don't have the talent to compete for the ultimate prize in this, with the guys who are putting out on the field. He'd never say that, but I just always got the feeling that that's the way he felt that day and through much of last season. If he goes to Tampa, last year Pro Football Focus, the analytics group, I think I'm right in saying this, had Godwin as the number 1 receiver in football and Evans the number 5 receiver in football for the season. And so, and then you think of Cameron Brate and still O.J. Howard, and you think of the talent they have there. It's far better right now. I would just say this: those 4 guys, and I include Julian Edelman, and I do not mean in any way to diminish or to demean Julian Edelman.
Right.
But those are 2 wide receivers better than any that Brady has had in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe since Randy Moss. And those are 2 tight ends better than he's had, obviously, last year since Gronk retired.
Right.
So, right away, if he goes to Tampa, he might have a little bit of an issue on the offensive line because they're okay. They're not great. But right away, he's playing with a better offense in Tampa than he played last year in New England.
The 2 major trades, well, there were 3 major trades yesterday. Obviously, Buckner going to the Colts for a 1. Stephon Diggs goes to Buffalo. And then Bill O'Brien deals DeAndre Hopkins. And, of course, as you know, Bill O'Brien, I worked with Bill O'Brien for 2 years here at Penn State.
Yep.
So what went into both of those deals with Houston? I know what Bill's personality is.
Yep.
At the same time, there's also money considerations.
Very much.
Did both enter into that?
I'll tell you exactly what happened in that DeAndre Hopkins trade, okay?
Good.
Bill and DeAndre Hopkins were a little bit oil and water, but Bill understands, honestly, that you're not going to love every one of your players, and you're going to bang your head against the wall sometimes in dealing with them. And you know what? Hopkins, I'm sure, felt the same way many times about Bill. Okay?
Agreed.
And you know Bill
I can tell you you're
well.
right.
I know him. I know him very well. And Bill's a tough guy. He can be hard to work with. But that's not because he's a jerk or because he's unfair or anything like that. He is just kind of a rock-hard guy who feels very strongly one way.
He's a tough, hard-nosed guy, which is fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So what happened in the last year or so is that, okay, he and Hopkins don't get along great, but he can live with that. But this year, coming into this year, he knew that DeAndre Hopkins, who had 3 years left on a 5-year contract, was going to want a new deal. And they had a very good situation there because his cap number was going to be in the range of about, 12 or $13 million, which for a guy who's one of the 3 or 4 best receivers in football, that's a good deal for the team. But he did get a lot of upfront money. And so, and he made it clear that he wanted a new contract. And so in Bill's situation, first of all, he kind of didn't want that headache. And the other part of this was, the trades that they've made to try to get back to a level playing field, especially with Laramie Tunsil at left tackle.
Yes.
That has robbed them of a bunch of draft choices. So right now, before this trade, in 2020 and 21, neither year would Bill O'Brien have had a pick in the top 50. So they make this trade and get the 40th overall pick from Arizona. And I think, look, I don't fault Bill for making a trade with DeAndre Hopkins, but, I mean, there's just no way he got enough. There's no way.
Right.
You can't basically get David Johnson, who had one great year, and then he's been just not impactful at all. He's got a big contract. Yeah, he had a great year.
Yeah, that great year was 2016.
Contract. Yeah, and he's got a big contract, and so basically, the Cardinals got Houston to take David Johnson off their hands for a lot of money, and I don't think he's going to play up to that contract. And then they only gave him the 40th pick in the draft, and it's just not enough. Right. Now, we don't know all the other things that were involved in this. We just don't. but I can't kill Bill O'Brien for trading a guy who's a great football player, but you got to get a better return than that.
Yep, exactly. One final question, then I'll let you go, and that deals with, you wrote a very thoughtful comment, a column. Well, you always do anyway, as a faithful reader of it. But it was about the optics of this.
Yeah.
And so now, after going through 48 hours of the optics of this, what do you think of it, Peter?
Well, I don't think it is a slam dunk stupid mistake by the NFL. Okay? I think it's a mistake. But I know that talk radio and the sports fan of America, who is just going to go absolutely, out of his mind if he has to watch any more news about the coronavirus. I mean, we're all watching the news about the coronavirus, but it's almost like it can really envelop your life. And so I think in some ways having something else to think about, because there's no sports on TV, having something else to think about is not a bad thing. But I think the one thing that, and I can tell you this, that the general managers who I've talked to, I just talked to one late last night, who signed a player to a big contract, and who said, I said, how are the logistics of this whole thing going? And he goes, here's what's ridiculous. We just signed this guy to a huge contract, a lot of money, and we can't get our own doctor to do the physical exam. The exam is going to have to be done by an independent physician that is approved by both the player's agent and us. And so, I mean, we need to get this guy examined by somebody with no stake in the game. We just need to know the truth. And he said, so we're probably not going to be able to do that. And it isn't that we don't trust him. We think he's totally healthy. But we want our own doctor to be able to look at him. But we're going to have to sign this contract without our own doctor looking at him. And he said that is totally and ridiculously unfair. So that is probably the thing that I think is the most unjust now. And I totally understand the people who say that it's tone deaf, because it is. But I do think it's not such a horrible thing to be able to give people something else to read and think about instead of 24/7 the coronavirus.
Right. Well, to you and Ann, my best. To your daughters, your little grandson Freddie, I think.
Grandson Freddie. We have a granddaughter now, Hazel. They're both out in San Francisco. They're sheltering in place, and I think our daughter is after 2 days has had enough of that.
I'm sure because I've done because I have 6 grandchildren now. Now 3 are here in State College, but I've got 1 up in New Hampshire and 2 in New York. FaceTime has been great. That part's been great.
Good. It is good.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from you, Peter. It really is.
Thanks so much for calling, Steve. I really, really appreciate it. Good luck to you, and hope that the Nittany Lions are on the field with the Golden Flashes in early September.
That's exactly right. I was working on that today, as a matter of fact, just to keep myself busy. Thanks, Peter.
Hey, take care.
You too. Peter King. Yeah, he was a better player, just so you know. Okay?
That was my first question out of everything we had to discuss with him. That was going to be my first question.
He was the better player. All right, let's just not, because you know what, in fact, he went on to become a really good high school player, and then I think he played at Ohio University too. I think because he went to Ohio University, and I think he played there in high school. He was a heck of a player, but he was a better player than I was. But it's interesting, a long time ago, this goes back many, many years, and he had just taken the job at Sports Illustrated, and I had him on the show. And I remember in order to set it up, I had talked to him off the air. And the two of us at that time were coaching Little League. You know, because this is like 1989, somewhere around there. Okay. And of course, we played in the same, as Peter just mentioned, we played in the same team. We also played for a coach. I'm not going to mention the guy's name because that's not fair. But boy, he was driven to win. And it was interesting, just in chit-chatting, you know, because Peter also coached his daughters in softball. You know, so he coached Little League, but he also coached his daughters in softball. And he wanted to make sure that life was as even as possible for all the players. And I said, I can't believe you said that. I do the same thing with how I coach Little League. And it was a direct result of how it was a 180 of how we were coached in Little League, because we both saw what was going on and rejected in some small way how that was done. I just found that to be interesting. He is one of, as you can tell, he's highly connected. He is highly intelligent, always has been. And he always gets it. You know, I have a lot of respect for him. I just, I'm not going to, obviously over the years our careers are split. Obviously I've been doing college sports. He's been working with the NFL for years. He covered the Bengals, he covered the Giants, and then of course Sports Illustrated. But I've read him forever, not because, hey, I know him. I read him forever because I just think he's just that good. And the profession has been, and of course he's done a lot now on the air too. The profession's better off for a guy like Peter King. Really is. Nothing but the highest respect. We will come back with more in a moment. We still have Neal Coolong on the show, final half hour from USA Today here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors. When it comes to car buying, there's the other guy's way, and then there's the SMC way. The other guys force you into a vehicle you really don't want. The Sunbury Motors way lets you take the time you need to browse, ask questions, and take the test drive and think on it. For over 100 years, the Mertz family and all their employees have made your experience the most pleasant one you'll ever have. The other guys won't offer you the best price for your trade, no matter how much they say they will. The SMC way is their promise to provide you with the most money the market shows your vehicle is worth. The SMC way is to offer you all applicable factory rebates on new vehicles and generous discounts. Looking for a pre-owned vehicle? The SMC way checks each vehicle in a 200-mile radius to determine the lowest price, then beat it. It's the lowest price promise, just part of the SMC way. The choice is up to you. The other guy's way or the SMC way. The SMC way wins every time. Sunbury Motors Company in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, and at sunburymotors.com. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for over 100 years.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is The Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Talk. Neal, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be here. I am also a firm believer in the concept of simple. I can't go any higher than that. So that gear works best for me.
Good. We're both at attempting to overachieve on it. Simple. So let me start at least with the Brady part. There's a lot to go through. We have a long list here to go through. Obviously, to me, it is no surprise at all that Brady is not going to go back to the Patriots. And I've got a feeling that when he talked with Bill Belichick last week, they said, quote, it didn't go well. I didn't expect it to go well. He's 43.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you look at it at a 10,000-foot level, there wasn't anything outside of, well, he's always played with the Patriots. compelling Brady to stay in New England. It has nothing to do with that when you get down to it. He obviously doesn't have a whole lot of time left in his career, but he wanted to win. He wanted to go somewhere where he could compete, and Brady had kind of a catch-22 situation in New England. For him to go back at an even reasonable market rate would have dug enough into New England's salary cap that they couldn't put any other weapons around him, and they don't have any other weapons. So New England's going to have to take a step back this season. I'm not sure if people are fully aware of that. With or without Brady, that team was not going to be as competitive as we're used to seeing them. I think they have a lot of components of that defense still intact, but we saw that defense slow down quite a bit toward the end of last season, and they don't have any offensive playmakers, and they haven't for a while. I mean, really, they've been able to make hay with, a signing or two here and there and get something out of a few guys in order to make their offense go, but they've stalled considerably. And the gamble on Josh Gordon didn't work out the way that they had wanted it to.
Right, and they gambled over and over on Josh Gordon. They gambled over and over on him.
Yeah, and losing Rob Gronkowski along with that pushes them into a situation doing something that really is very anti-Patriots, which is signing a guy like Antonio Brown. For other reasons, that doesn't work out beyond one game for them. But the signing in and of itself, the time in which they signed him, the money that they gave him, I think they were influenced by the fact that they knew before everybody else that offense wasn't going to be very good this season. And we saw a lot of that. It's not so much that Brady is declining. I just don't think that the team had weapons around him to really do anything the way that they have in the past.
I know when you start looking at options, people have talked about Tampa Bay. Between Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, just on speculation, he'd have two better wideouts there than he would have if he'd gone back to New England, if he goes there.
Two better wideouts there than he's had, I think, at any other point in his career.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two pretty good players. I mean, Let's be honest here. I've been saying, by and large, that there might be a sentimental reason for Brady to want to stay in New England, but if he doesn't stay in New England, he's going to Tampa Bay. I know that people think that that's crazy, but everything else that Brady would want to do at this point in his career points to Tampa Bay. You're throwing to two really good receivers. Keep that in mind. You also have, in many ways, an underutilized tight end in O.J. Howard. I don't think he's hit his full potential. I think some of that might have to do with the combination of a coach that doesn't tend to, like his quarterbacks throwing to tight ends all that much, and a quarterback that doesn't usually like to throw to his own team or to guys on his own team very often. So those two things right there probably stalls a kid like Howard, but he has the ability to be a guy like Gronk. I'm not saying Gronk, but he is that type of receiver, and we're going to see that more and more. That's all built in. They don't have to spend much money to keep that in place right now. You put in a solid quarterback in Tampa Bay, they've got a real dangerous offense going for them. With a very quarterback-friendly coach, Bruce Arians is not a guy that dictates a whole lot to his veteran passers what to do. They do much of what they want to do with Arians stuff sprinkled in. He works well with quarterbacks, and that's how he's able to get as much out of them as he does. It's a great situation for Brady. On top of that, Tampa Bay is completely leveraged. They don't have any options anymore. They're staring at either the 42-year-old quarterback or the guy that just threw 30 interceptions. We can't give him $30 million.
Who just had an eye exam. Okay, so let's see. Come on.
For good reasons. The decision was to either tag him at $30 million or whatever it was, or give him an extension. You can't give Jameis Winston either of those things right now.
Right.
So Tampa Bay doesn't have much of a choice. And if you're Tom Brady, your post-career right now financially is set up on the idea that you are selling a nutrition and a lifestyle brand. He can go out to people and tell them that, hey, I played the most savage game there is until I was 45 years old because I did all this crazy stuff, okay? Buy it. $199 a month, free samples are here. He's able to market that product incredibly well if he does make it to 45. Not to say that there's anything, magical about 45, but if he goes and plays somewhere else for multiple years, you're looking at a guy with insane regenerative powers, and that's going to sell a product pretty well. And being able to do that in a state without state taxes, he's bringing in more money down there than he would pretty much anywhere else. So to me, all signs point to him to Tampa Bay. And it sounds like they're among the front runners right now. I can't imagine, though, that there are more than two of them. And it's the Chargers or it's Tampa Bay. Obviously, it's not New England. Nowhere else really makes any sense, and I think he's going to weigh those two offers. But for me, it's been he's heading to Tampa.
Okay, so now we'll get to Hopkins and Diggs in a few moments. Let's start with this. The Steelers placed linebacker Ryan Shazier on the reserve retired list today, which essentially keeps him with the organization. What did you think of this move?
I'd have to look back on exactly what the team's rights are with the player after certain years of non-service, but they can continue to put him on injured reserve up to a point, and they have to do something else. And that's what they're doing now. The injured reserve piece guaranteed him a minimum contract, which he's had over the last 2 years. They gave him his fifth-year option in 2018 as well. 2018. They've been paying him the whole time, and in that he's been doing scouting and some coaching for them. It sounds like they want to keep him around. I feel like they probably think that they owe that to him. If an opportunity should come up for him to play, and I'm not a doctor, I can't say whether he would or he wouldn't, I'm sure they would be willing to explore that, or at least that's what they're going to tell people. Where it sits now, I'd imagine it's really just, well, you're not a player anymore. You can't be a player and have us pay you outside of the salary cap. So what we're doing is we're making sure you're retired. Here's your new salary. Here's your cube. Go see Pam down for some office supplies, something to that effect. It's procedural more than anything else. But they've never said anything short of he's going to be with us as long as he wants to be with us. So he'll continue doing his thing. All right.
Ramon Foster decided to retire.
Yeah, it's sort of a bummer in a way, too. I mean, Ramon Foster, I've said this on this segment a bunch of times before, but Ramon Foster to me is the modern Steeler. He came in as unheralded a player as there can be. And for him, I've written 3 different articles asking whether or not the team will move on from Foster, and they ended up giving him an extension. That's some serious, gut power. You love the fact that he's made himself valuable to multiple levels of this team for as long as he did. This is an undrafted free agent who played tackle in college. He's played every position along that offensive line. He's had a multitude of contracts. Not too many guys get 4 contracts in the NFL, and usually they're guys that might not have made top dollar in their career, but that's the level that Foster kept himself at. The fact that he ended up being the team's union rep, I think, speaks well to his character, his intelligence. He's a great guy. I don't think anybody epitomized the Steeler way better than Foster has over the last decade or so, considering where he came from, considering what he had to do to stick around. And he was a valuable member on a great offensive line for a couple of years. And he was also, at one point, maybe the best member on a terrible offensive line. I mean, he really had great perspective over the years, and he could tell the Steelers story better than probably anybody could over the last decade. And the team's going to miss him in one way or another.
They also decided to release Anthony Chickillo and Mark Barron. I don't think there was any surprise there. What about you?
No, not at all. In fact, I think those guys, people made a ton about the money that they were given last year. The Steelers in particular, and they're not the only ones, there are a lot of teams that do this, they'll give a guy a 2-year contract to spread whatever signing bonus they're giving them over 2 years to make it not, crush them as much in the current year. And then in the second year, it's not really all that bad of a hit either. So they're 1-year contracts. They'll reevaluate them and see if they want to keep them around. But I don't think we saw enough from either one of those players to suggest a second year on their current deal was in their best interest. Now, I would imagine they're both probably the types of players the team's going to say, hey, you know what, we're going to cut you, but stay in shape. We might be interested here down the line. We're going to get through free agency and the draft and see where we're at in minicamp, and we'll let you know if something comes up. I don't think they're above that for either player, but these were not impact guys. I think Barron probably got more snaps than I would have wanted him to get over the second half of the season with the way that he played. He also had kind of a difficult spot. They haven't been able to really lock into what they want out of this sort of dime hybrid position. They really want a safety/linebacker, and in many ways and experience, Barron fit that, but it didn't seem to work very well on the field, whether that's him physically, whether it's the scheme that they're trying to run. Morgan Burnett was the guy they brought in 2 years ago to handle a similar role, and he didn't work out great for him, and he wanted out of town. I don't think they were going to cut him, but they signed Barron to do that. It didn't work out very well. We'll see what they do with it from this point forward, but I would think they're going to try to address it in the draft.
Right. with free agents, the Steelers, they'll dabble a little bit in it here and there. Is that what you expect this time for the Steelers, to dabble a little bit here and there? I mean, let's face it, doing the expected has really changed because they moved up in the draft and got Bush. They then dealt a 1 to get Minkah Fitzpatrick, so it's not like they've been doing business as usual. Does that model change in free agency?
It's kind of crazy when you put it like that. They haven't been operating on their kind of modus operandi in a while now. I mean, the two that you mentioned are two either extremely rare or unprecedented moves from Kevin Colbert and his staff. We have not seen that at all. The moves that they've made to this point did clear up a bunch of cap space, and I think people get caught too much into the fluidity of that. These were all planned moves. None of this was really a surprise. This is just due diligence. It's roster maintenance and management. They would have made all these moves if they had $50 million in cap space, in my opinion. So I don't think right now they're doing anything differently. Will they? I don't know, simply because stuff that they've done over the last 2 years is not what I would have expected them to do. So what I would think that they would do right now would be address their restricted free agents, which primarily is starting right tackle Matt Filer and nickelback Mike Hilton. The real value of a restricted free agent is you get a player at a fairly low amount of pay, and you get control over him for that long. When they're starting caliber players, like Filer and Hilton both are, you're getting starters at about $2-3 million, somewhere in there, depending on what level of tender they want to give them. That's a nice, affordable starter who's not on a rookie contract. So you want to hold on to those guys when you have the opportunity to do it. Along with that, you need another left guard. If Foster isn't there, B.J. Finney is available in free agency. So my guess would be with the cap space they have, depending on where you look, I'd estimate it probably at or around $8-9 million, somewhere in there. I would think they want to get Filer and Hilton both secured, maybe Zach Banner as well. Okay. I'm not sure you need a tag for him. Those three, and then you need to find a left guard. And I think Finney is the guy that they're going to want to get. And we're going to hear his name probably sooner rather than later here. Yeah. And along with that, I don't think the Steelers are done with cap types of moves. I for the life of me, I don't understand how Jordan Berry is still on the roster. No one's paying him $1.8 million to punt this season. That's just not going to happen. So they do have some space available left to create, and some moves that they still need to make. Maybe they get into free agency outside of their own guys. I'm not 100% sure of that yet.
Neal Coolong will come back. Wrap it up in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. You are not happy with the latest Eagles move, I can tell.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
I'm happy that Javon Hargrave is now heading to the other side of the state. I'm happy with that because that gets the defensive line more depth. You can move Malik Jackson probably to defensive end now. And they did resign Hassan Ridgeway. I'm okay with that, too. He's a good backup. But what they're doing in the secondary, I don't understand. You're letting go. First of all, you didn't learn from the Brian Dawkins situation several years ago, but they let him go too early. I think I don't know what Malcolm was looking for, whether it was more money or years or both or what, but they had to find a way to keep him there because I think he's got at least a solid 3 years, maybe even 4 years left in him. And plus, they just re-signed Rodney McLeod for 2 years, who's also a veteran. He's a little bit younger than Malcolm, but still. And now you re-signed Jalen Mills, who's a mediocre corner at best, can't stay healthy, and now they're apparently going to try to move him to safety. I mean, that's just ludicrous. Come on, Howie. I know you're better than that. I'm a little frustrated right now with the secondary. I like the Hargrave signing, but everything else I'm not happy with right now.
It's all about money. It's all about cap. It's all about age. So, I mean, there's a lot of things here, for example, that come into play with this. Again, I go back to that documentary that was done by the NFL. Well, I don't know if it's done by the NFL, but it was on NFL Network. And, a football life. And Randy Cross was discussing Bill Walsh. And at one point, he has a meeting with Bill Walsh, and Bill Walsh says, I'm paraphrasing here, you have probably 6 more years left in your NFL career. He says, I only want the great 3 years. That's the NFL. That's the NFL in a nutshell. I think it's amazing Tom Brady was with the Patriots for 20 years. I think that's remarkable. Patrick Chambers on the show tomorrow. Nate Bauer on the show tomorrow. Oh, no, I guess with John McClain?
John McClain's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
You're
Got a lot
listening
going
to
on.
News